NHL.com every year.
All right, we are live.
You just want to find the playoff bracket. And
there is no playoff bracket yet, though. But Brent, I'll tell it to you.
But there are matchups that are known.
That's true.
So where's the bracket with the TBDs?
Yeah, I like that.
If the season ended today, every year
Here's
they
a tweet.
Make the same
Here's
mistakes.
a tweet, Brian. I
like
posted in the chat here.
NHL.com is just like us.
There.
What am I supposed to do with that? Click it?
I guess.
I can't.
I'll send it to you on Discord.
Hang on.
We're live, by the way. Hopefully everyone is.
Hi.
This is our pre-show banter. It's a classic part of the episode.
Have we introduced Ryan?
We haven't started the show yet.
Yeah.
But we're on YouTube.
It's the pre-show.
Well, Ryan doesn't. Well, Ryan's name is on the placard.
Oh, okay. So we're just gonna let him.
Well, I was planning to actually just start the show.
Okay.
Sending it, then we could introduce him only once.
Because it's so laborious.
This is Ryan. Well, I can start right now. I could literally start right now.
You could have just said "Hey, Ryan's here. He's going to join us for the show tonight." But more on we'll introduce him formally when we get to the show.
You were mid-sentence when we went live, and that's been where we've been. I didn't have a chance.
Okay. Here we go.
But I think we got a good crowd here. I was very delinquent and only posted this afternoon that we're going live, and we've still got.
Oh yeah, no one even knows we're doing
Matt,
a show tonight.
We've got Shams, we've got Michael. So I mean,
they don't even know.
I mean, these guys know.
Okay, right. So 6 of the 8 matchups are set.
Shams, the thing you're supposed to remind me is Jeremy's good point about how players that rely mostly on power play might not be as valuable in the playoffs. That's what I'm going to say at some point on the show.
Because there's fewer penalties.
Yeah, fewer. That's better than less.
Well, Victor is very, very picky about.
Wait, did I say
fewer
Victor?
And less.
I meant Jeremy.
No, you said Jeremy, and I said Victor.
Oh, Victor.
Victor is it means
Victor
a lot
Nuno?
to him. Victor Nuno, that we get fewer and less, right? Do you know when to use fewer and when to use less?
Give me a quiz, and I'll let me test me. I'm not sure if I do. I think I do, but maybe I don't.
Okay. Well, I want
a sentence, and I'll tell you which one I think it should be.
Fewer. Well, I need to search an actual quiz.
Yeah. Isn't 15 items or fewer?
If there's Ryan, no cheating.
I don't know. Numbers?
I don't think that's true. Okay.
I think it's based on counting.
Elon, if you're talking about a player's minutes going down,
he has fewer minutes than the last game, I would say.
I wish I could tell you.
Okay, so let's just start the show.
Okay, no. I have this. Fewer is a decreased number of items.
Mm-hmm.
Less is a decreased amount of something. So you say fewer when it's something you can count, like when you're counting. So fewer minutes, you have 2 fewer minutes, but you have less time.
Oh, so something more abstract is less.
Like something that you can, So if you're talking patience, would you say fewer or less?
Less.
If you're talking goals, would you say fewer or less?
Oh, but unless it's patients, like the number of patients a doctor has, then you would say fewer.
Okay. I this week I Googled, do homophones rhyme?
Okay.
Like homonyms.
Yeah.
What do you think?
If it's the same word, if it sounds the same?
Like bread with an A, like what you eat, and bread.
I'll say yes. I'll say yes, they do rhyme.
You're wrong.
Okay. Well, I'm an idiot. I don't know.
All right. Well, that's the pre-show, everybody.
Okay, let's start.
Do you want to know why? You didn't ask why.
I don't care. Should I pretend?
I want to know why.
The reason is that there's two conditions you need to satisfy for rhyming. The first is that the end needs to be the same. Mm-hmm. The second, apparently, is that the consonant preceding the rhyming portion needs to be different, or at the start, or whatever. Yeah. So then I want to know, does bread rhyme with ed? Because there's no consonant preceding the rhyming portion.
This is also just made up. These rules are arbitrary. in my opinion.
Well, someone
Like if I'm writing a song, I could rhyme bread with Ed. Like I could have one verse end with bread and one verse end with Ed, and it'll sound fine. No one's gonna complain.
I mean, some people rhyme, like some songs rhyme the same word with the same word.
Speaking of bread, Panarin is going to the playoffs and might be a high pick in drafts. Let's talk about it on the show.
That means it's time to start. Elon, is your screen brightness all the way up?
I just have like a black screen facing me right now. Let me just, how about that? It's brighter now.
I'm just checking.
Okay. Good one. Okay, let's do this.
Who needs a ring light when you have a white screen?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah! Yes! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are currently in the presence of greatness. I'm your host, Dylan Dubrovsky. With me are two people, but first, your good friend and mine, the fantasy hockey robot, the Poobah prognostication, the IVP MVP himself, ready to talk about the playoffs. It's Brian Kahn. Brian, how's it going?
Good. I'm ready to segue from talking grammar in the pre-show and into something much more exciting. You know, it'd be a good podcast, though. Grammar. It would be like analyzing Kelsey Grammer's speech and seeing.
Okay.
Yeah. Just put. There's a free idea for anyone who wants it.
You can tell that Brian is in off-season mode right now.
Okay, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having. Well, you don't have me. We have each other. We do have each other. Thank you all still for listening, for tuning in. Congrats to those who won. Sympathies to those who lost in your playoff pools. Unfortunately, I couldn't close the deal in my season-long points-only league. I faded at the end. That Marner injury hurt, but then a couple bad decisions hurt more. Actually, the guy, it was a weird situation. I don't know how deeply I should go into this. I know your answer is not at all, but so this manager, I've been like, this is like a friend's league.
Right? We have a fancy guest here. We'll just let him linger.
I've played with him for years, and I swear he had a personality change. Like about halfway through the season, he kept adding the guys that I had just added to my watch list or that I was waiting for an injury to get. Like he was right on the same page as me the whole time, and I feel like someone took over his team, but I don't know how to ask. But they did a great job. Anyway, congrats, Rafi, and whoever ghost managed your team. And congrats to everyone else who won their leagues. It's playoffs, baby. Yeah.
All right. Good job, Rafi or Rafi. I'm going to go see Rafi actually in October, Brian. I don't know if you know.
Like the singer.
The singer. Yeah.
Highlight of my year last year.
I know you talked about it on the show, but okay, we cannot delay any longer because we're not here just Brian and Elon to talk nonsense. We've got with us, get this, someone who's been in the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League for 3 seasons. Season 1, won the fast track, most points in the whole thing, made it to tier 1. Next season, won tier 1, couple Ultimate Champion. This season, defended his title and won again. It's Ryan Wood. Welcome back to the show, Ryan. We're not worthy. So excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Elon, I'm just going to add like one thing to Ryan's trophy case. Is he also won the President's Trophy in Tier 1 this year too, and was like a hit away from winning or a shot away from winning the points for. Like it like he ran the table in every way. And we've never seen a competitor like Ryan before. So we're here to dig in and find out how we can become Ryan.
Yeah, we need to know his secrets because we've been doing this podcast for 10 years, 11 years. And I feel like I just don't know how to be this good. But luckily for us now, we're going to learn. Also, by the way, to add, I believe, Ryan, weren't you in the finals last year of the KKPP, the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool?
Yeah, I was. That was a run. But
yeah, this year, the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool is going to start drafting tomorrow morning. It's going to be very exciting. We're going to talk all about our strategies and our ideas going into the playoffs in a little bit. But yeah, first, while we have Ryan, let's talk a little bit about just like I think we all have a lot to learn potentially, but I guess where we can start, maybe we can start with this season, Ryan. Like, what was your mentality going into a season? You're the defending. I've been a defending champion. Brian's been a defending champion, and we've both been like not very good the following season. Me especially last year, I was really terrible. You came in. Like, did you go in like thinking you're going to go with the same strategy that got you the win, or did you have ideas of ways you were going to shake it up? I'm just curious to know what your mindset was and what your strategy was.
I think I came in sort of with a similar strategy. I think I was sort of nervous. Like I was afraid of being a one-hit wonder, sort of like shooting up to tier 1, winning it, and then just like immediately disappearing. So I think there was still like a little bit of imposter syndrome there of like, I want to do well. So it's like, even if I don't win, it's like, oh, he did good, and, go from there. But yeah, I think my strategy was similar. Like I felt like first year in T1, I learned a lot. And sort of, I spent a lot of the first half of the year sort of making mistakes and getting better in some things. And I sort of felt like coming back this year, I wanted to kind of apply that from the start and sort of see where it could take me. So I think that was kind of how I approached it, sort of like similar draft strategies. And then in season, sort of like kind of using some of what I learned around making ads and being patient and things, kind of getting used to the sort of the speed of tier 1.
So yeah, I guess like the big... So yeah, I guess like I just want to know, like, I don't know how I could glean this from you. I want to just learn like what is that you're doing that is like so successful compared to everyone else. And obviously, like we should give credit to Nolan, who you beat by 1 fantasy point in this insane final day of the couple season. So like very easily could have been us on the call with Nolan right now. So don't want to erase his great season, but you came out on top, Ryan. And yeah, like I don't know if you wanted to talk about the draft or like in-season strategy. Like what? I know it's like a broad question, but just like what? How do you do it? Like what are you doing? How are you so good?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess sort of I have some ideas sort of around the draft and in season. And like I imagine a lot of these are things that like other people are doing too, kind of in some combination. But I think they're sort of the things that I've thought about and that I've tried to refine sort of over these years. So I don't know, like if we start with the draft, I guess like for me, I almost feel like I think less about the draft than some people do. I think that I've read, like going through the Discord, there's a lot of strategies on, what are the variables that are important when sort of picking players. And I sort of feel like there's some of them that I definitely agree with, and some of them that I feel like I almost fade more often than not. So I think like at draft time.
Oh no, sorry. Okay, I'll jump in.
No.
Or were you about to say no? Sorry, continue. I'll edit that. Okay.
Well, no, I guess I was just going to say sort of like, one of the big ones for me is like I don't care a lot about schedule at draft time. I think we talk a lot about like prioritizing off nights, or I think there's debate around off night schedules. Like, do you prioritize them or is it more of a tiebreaker? Like for me, it's at best a tiebreaker. And even then, like, I don't want to go too far into it. And I think there's also a flip side of sort of prioritizing off nights where like I see there's cases where people actually like deprioritize bad off night schedules, even for like elite players. So sort of like Tampa Bay had like a really bad off night schedule this year. And it seemed like there's some people who were sort of fading like top Tampa Bay people. Like I'm less interested in Kucherov and Stamkos and Point because they don't have a very good off night schedule. And, like, whereas in my mind, sort of like the whole point of an off night schedule is sort of to like make more room for streamers. But like, you don't want to be making room for streamers at the expense of like studs. Like I'm always going to play Kucherov. So I'll have him. And then if I can't fit a streamer onto my lineup that day, I'll stream some other position on some other night. I can always get somebody on an off night. I don't need to worry as much about fitting people.
So yeah, so you're saying definitely in a draft, you're like wanting to just get the best player available. What about like positions? Are you someone who's trying to get D early, or are you just mainly focused on forwards? Everyone likes to talk about how they like to fade goalies. Like, I'm looking at your team now that you ended with, and I see you had Ottinger and then Logan Thompson and a Noonan. So obviously those last couple were probably streams at some point. Was it your goal though to get like one good starting goalie in the draft?
So in the draft, I felt like I was mainly just looking at value. But like I had values on goalies that were such that I was able to get one good goalie. And then I think as the year went on, I sort of regretted that. Like if I could go back and change one thing about my draft, it's that I could take like the $24 I spent on Ottinger and then spend it on like anything else. But I think it's almost interesting because it's like it feels like goalies are being devalued so much. Like comparing 2 years ago to this year, like goalies have come down a lot, and I think next year they're going to go down even more. So I think there's going to eventually be value there somewhere. But like in my draft, I like to try to get at least one good defenseman. I don't think I did a great job of it this year. I think I got kind of lucky with Hedman. Preseason, I think I was on the Sergachev train over the Hedman train, but then Hedman was who I got, and that ended up working out great. And then like I just couldn't win a defenseman to save my life in the auction, so I ended up with like a bunch of scrubs. But then was able to kind of build up people throughout the year on the wire. So I think position wise, like I like to try to get a defenseman. Goalies, like I wanted somebody who was good, but if you ask me what I'm going to do next year, I think it's more just going to be about volume. But I think positionally too, like on forwards, I feel like I don't care that much about forward position. So, like for preseason rankings, like, I'm a Dom guy. I'll call it Dom, spreadsheet wise. So like on Dom's spreadsheet every year, I always change it to forwards instead of center, left wing, right wing. Because I think with the util spots, which this was being discussed in the Discord recently too, like with the util spots, you often have so much flexibility that you're not set in positions as much as you would be in a league that didn't have those spots. So I think forward positions, I care less about those.
Man, it almost seems like the big strategy you're telling us is like, don't overthink the schedule, don't overthink the positions.
Yeah, and this is all like draft day stuff, right? So like this is you're setting up your team. So it sounds like you're most concerned with just getting the best player, which means that to work the schedule and to work positions, do you find that you are making up for it in season? Like, are you playing? Like, are you drafting this way expecting to have to correct in season? Or are you just like, hey, if it works out, great. And if not, I can adjust. Like the question's two parts. One, that one that I just asked, like, are you like, yeah, like how much do you anticipate having to correct for whatever potential mess you might have made? But I don't know how likely it is that you've actually made that mess. And the second part is, I guess, like if you were to weight draft versus in season play, how would you sort of weight them for your like in terms of importance to your strategy?
Sure. So I think on the first one, like I expect a bit of both. Like I'm expecting that a huge chunk of my team is going to be gone by the time I reach the end of the year. So like I'm expecting that I'm going to be wrong on some guys. I'm expecting that at certain points in the year, I might be overweight on positions in such a way that it makes it difficult for me to set my lineup well. So like I even had that this year, and I made a couple trades throughout the year. And I think this is a spot where trading becomes important. Like when I say I don't care what positions, like I don't want to come out of the draft with like 7 centers and then like, I'll figure out which 2 or 3 I'm going to deal later. But, to have someone like 5 centers, I do feel comfortable with that. And then when you finally get to a point where it's like, all 5 of these centers are actually really good, and I'm constantly having to choose, like I often at times this year, I had, what did I have? I had like Kadri, I had Robert Thomas, I had Bo Horvat, all these centers that are like kind of the same, like usually there's some that might be better than others, but then those are like my least favorite start sit decisions. And I think when I find myself in that spot, that's when I then look towards trading of like, which one of these guys can I trade, or someone higher up the depth chart can I trade to sort of free up the space there.
It's really interesting. Like, and I know you're only like halfway through answering what I've asked, but I'm going to interrupt anyway. Cause so like the strategies around maximizing the schedule and like positional scarcity are really like playing in the margins, right? And I feel like the assumption that I had was that that I've created over the last few years in the KKUPFL is that like you do win by playing in those margins and trying to maximize because the skill at the top is so tight. Like everybody is incredible and luck plays a big factor. So you have to find all these extra spaces you control. But it's really interesting, like that you're like when I think we've paid more and more attention every year to the schedule, and now I'm hearing you be like the schedule, like whatever.
Yeah, like especially like for the most of the year, like when you get to the playoffs and like you're in the last kind of month or whatever, and you're sort of tooling your team up for the playoffs for the trade deadline, then I'm starting to look at the schedule. But like same thing too, like looking at the schedule of the playoffs on draft day, it's like, man, like I got to make the playoffs, and like I've got
Right.
22 weeks or whatever that I need to do well, and it's just
How about like week to week play? How do you handle the whole, we have 4 moves. Are you like someone who's using a lot of moves early each week to or do you like save moves for the end? Like how do you think about how to allocate your 4 moves? I'm just trying to get something from you that like so I can copy you next year.
Yeah, so it varies because like that plays into the second part of Brian's question of like draft versus in season, and like I think in season is more important than the draft. I think like if you have a bad draft, then it's going to be a lot of work to sort of bounce back from that. But if you have like a really good draft, that alone I think is not going to be enough to go all the way. And like like I look at like the fast track winners too from the last few years and like all the top of the leaderboard and stuff. Like those people had good drafts, but they all had to do a lot of things after that to then score that many points. So I guess in season move wise, this is something I've changed on a bit, I think, kind of in the last year or so. It used to be a lot of like make moves early to get people who'd like play a lot of games during the week. And then you're like, oh, I'd pick somebody up thinking, oh, I'm going to hold them the whole week because they play 4 times. And then I'll use my other 2 picks or 3 picks or whatever on like starts as I went throughout the week. Whereas now I feel like I'm looking more like I'm planning to use all my moves every week. And I know that there's people who have different views on that. I know like Marcus has had tons of success over all the years being notorious for making few moves. And it's an interesting case of like having a super balanced team. I think in my case, like I don't want to have a super balanced team. Like I want to have a bottom of my roster that I can just churn through. And if I don't have it, I want to like generate it. I want to make a 2-for-1 trade or something and try to make up those spaces. So now like 4 moves on a week, I'm looking a lot at like, can I get someone who plays a lot early in the week so then I can be pivoting to something else? I also think I kind of try to save some moves a bit so I can kind of see how the week's going. Because if you can get in that situation where like you win the week early and then you start making moves for next week, if you can start chaining those, it seems like it's a really big advantage kind of going week to week. Same way, sort of like giving up on a week when it's gone. So I think, usually on Monday, like I might make 2 moves if like my roster's in a spot where I got a lot of people only playing 2 times and I got to kind of cycle them out. But otherwise, I think I'm trying to be more patient. And that's something that I'm trying to like work on even. Like I think I'm getting more patient as time goes on.
And then I'm curious, like when you're deciding on players to add, how do you balance like how good the player is versus how many games you'll get in a week? Like, are you someone who will give up a game in exchange for a player that you think might be a hold, or are you like just going like I just want as many games as possible? I know like Jeremy from Short Shifts was talking about he just wants to get games, and like he's also like super successful, and he'll be joining you in Tier 1 next year, and that'll be really fun to watch. But yeah, what's your strategy when you're deciding on which players to add in?
Yeah, it's tough. Like I feel like this is something that I've seen other people, I think, do a better job of this than me. And so I'm trying to get better at it. I think those early week moves, I'm just looking at schedule. Like I want games, stuff like that. But then this is where when I'm sort of making moves midweek, trying to add people who do sort of have that mix of upside and schedule. Because I think I've been in situations before where I felt like I only focused on schedule and then I missed out on people who then turned into kind of season-long holds. But then I've sort of seen it go both ways too. Like, especially I think of this with goalies of like, I want to churn through a lot of goalies because like, I have no idea when a goalie is going to suddenly become a hold. So sort of like in some of these cases, just like picking up people anytime they're in a good situation to giving them that week to see like, oh, will they turn into a hold for next week? That's something that I've had some good luck with this last year. And then I'm planning to kind of do more of in the future. So I think schedule would be like my first answer, like especially early in the week. But like, I think I'm trying to move more towards picking up upside guys who will be good longer term, because I think that's kind of how you build a successful team.
I have you mentioned trades, Ryan, before, and you made 2 this year. You trade, and you mentioned like trading, like having too many centers in both. Well, one of them you traded and received a center. So you made 2 trades. First at the end of October, so just a few weeks into the season, you traded you traded Beniers and Aiden Hill for Kadri and Tarasenko, which, I mean, I think Kadri is the big win there. Aiden Hill had value, but was injured and shared time. And I'd say Tarasenko and Beniers were probably pretty comparable. And then the second trade you made was you traded Braden Point and Keandre Miller for Jesper Bratt, and that was in mid-January. So just in retrospect, could you maybe just take a minute to you talk about both, or dig into one about how those trades might exemplify the trading strategy that you mentioned earlier, and whether you think they worked out for you?
Yeah, I think both of those trades were sort of to try to help sort of the composition of my team. So that first trade, actually, Tarasenko was the target. I did not have enough right wings, and it was at the point I think I had 2 of them or something. So it's almost I couldn't fill my right wing slots reliably, and I needed to kind of do something about that. And Tarasenko kind of had that hot start, so I was okay, had a hard start. The team that was on, the guy had 4 or 5 solid right wings. So this was an example of find a team that has right wings to spare. Aiden Hill had a good start to the year, so that was kind of an Aiden Hill for Tarasenko trade, and we did sort of a disappointing center swap to kind of help even it out, because Kadri started really slow. I think he had 1 assist in 9 games or something. Beniers was starting slow, so that's kind of what that was. It was I needed a right wing, identify a team that has a lot of right wings. Nimmer had a lot of right wings, and kind of made the swap there. And then the point for Bratt was sort of a similar deal. So it's I had too many centers, but I felt that I couldn't. It's hard to trade centers like Robert Thomas and Kadri and things like that, especially for a winger, because they're kind of guys that I feel even though their points say that they're 4.8 a couple of points per game or whatever, I think people look at them as kind of I don't really want Robert Thomas, or I don't really want Calgary Flames. So a situation like that, it's okay, well, can I trade somebody higher up my lineup for a higher end winger and kind of make room that way instead? So getting the dual eligible winger there for Point, I think, was good for me. I think through the course of the rest of the year, I think Point technically got more points, but I think they were both close. I think they finished within 5 or 8 of each other on the overall scoring. And plus, Brad had a good playoff, so.
Yeah, plus Brad also had a really good off-night schedule, so you probably got a few more games played from getting.
Yeah,
Brad
plus during the trade too. During the trade, Brad had an extra 3 games, I think, or something, or 4 games left in the year too. So, yeah,
nice. Okay, so switching to a couple questions we have from the patrons here. Trev, our accountability czar, wanted to know. I don't know if you had time to think about this in advance. I don't know if you saw it, but throughout the season, were there any takes that Brian and I made on the show that you disagreed with? Because probably your opinion's worth more than ours at the moment.
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I think I listen to the podcast every week, and I learn a lot from you guys. And I also like kind of hearing what you think, because it helps me think of if I do disagree with you, then it's well, if you think that, then chances are other people in my division might also think that. So if I disagree, then I can go and try to negotiate a trade or something like that. Or else on the flip side, if I disagree, sometimes it helps me kind of reevaluate a player and see well, wait a second, maybe I'm wrong on this. So I don't know. I think the first thing I thought about when I heard this was actually a short shifts take, where late in the year they were throwing some shade at Alex Nylander, which I remember hearing and thinking oh, but he shoots so much and he's getting so much ice time. I understand Alex Nylander scoring a hat trick's not going to happen every game. I was oh man, he's legit. And then he ended up getting hurt and was gone for a while.
He did score a goal in the last game.
He did. Oh man. And plus I wish I picked him up the last week. I didn't do it, and he scored and got an assist. I was oh man. But I tried to think of the mega show. One that I thought of as a historical thing was that I feel I'm a bit of a Sam Bennett truther. And I felt last year there was a lot of disrespect for Sam Bennett on the pod. He shoots a lot. The Bennett Kachuk Verhaeghe is a great line, which wasn't really a line for as much as this year as I would like to see it be. But I feel you guys kind of came around on Bennett this year, and then he sort of, I don't know, arguably had a worse year.
Then he let us down. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you guys go back to dislike him, and then he can be good again next year. So that's a historical one. I guess another one is sort of Jeff Skinner, who is a person that I think I disagreed, and I think I was wrong. I think he did really well for me last year. And this year he had periods where he was great and then periods where he was not that good. And like coming back from injury this last time, he was getting terrible deployment, but I was like, oh man, like it's going to turn around. He has a great playoff schedule. I held him through all of that, and like he still did nothing. So I think I kept thinking he was going to rebound. I think you guys were more pessimistic on him, and I think you guys were right on that. So
yeah, it's always tricky at the end of the season. Yeah, we'll definitely take it at the end of the season. Like when these players are like slumping like that, and you have to wonder if there was like some injury issue or something going on with Skinner. Actually, Shams has been doing a great job of retweeting all of these like post scrums after the season where teams are talking about like which players had injuries. Like I'm just looking at the latest Jeff Skinner retweet and saying that Jeff Skinner said there were no lingering effects from the Nathan McKinnon hit in December. Health wasn't a factor in Skinner's second half. Expressed excitement to get to work on fixing what went wrong in his game. So things like that make it so hard. How are we going to project him for next year? It all comes down to like, is he going to figure out? I'd love to ask him on the first day of training camp. So how'd it go? Like, did you figure it out? But obviously he'll just say he did.
Those lines will be interesting next year. Like, because if he's back up on the first line, like I'll draft him. If he's on the third line, I won't. And then even if he's on the first line, like is Tage Thompson going to be last 2 weeks of the year Tage Thompson, or is he going to be somewhere in between? Like, who knows?
Well, what's the Tage Thompson news now? Let me see that one. Did he? Because I'd love to know if he was injured at some point in the season. He's not going to the Worlds. So he has some injury now, but he says it won't affect his off-season training. So yeah, I think we'll do an episode at some point. I know Brian makes fun that I should really write these down. I did make a note to write this down, which is close to writing it down, Brian.
So close. So close.
I want to do a show. Maybe we get Shams on and we talk about like, because Shams has been like following all of these things, like a show of just the end of season press conference injury updates, and like then we could like check like, oh, this guy turned like Stutzla was like hurt for a lot of the then we can like decide for ourselves like in the show like if we actually think that matters, if we believe it, like if that's going to affect how much we weigh the season projecting next year. But okay, so Ryan, I guess as we start to transition, because you're going to stick around and we're going to start talking about the upcoming NHL playoffs and maybe give some tips to people who haven't done their playoff pools yet, including everyone going into the KKPP. You mentioned you love Sam Bennett. You also mentioned how you traded for Tarasenko. Curious, who are you taking ahead on Florida if you want to take one of those guys at this point? I should give some context. Tarasenko's been playing with Barkov and Reinhart. Mm-hmm. Bennett with, like you said, Verhaeghe and Tkachuk. Verhaeghe back from injury. I assume it's like Tkachuk, Barkov. I guess that's like, and then Reinhart. There's a lot of exciting players on Florida that you can go with. But yeah, definitely I think you're going to want to go all the way down the lineup, especially if you expect that their series will go somewhat long with Tampa, which I feel like that's a good series. I feel like that could go long.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I don't know. I guess like I lean Tarasenko, but I don't love it. I felt like I remember watching kind of in the semifinal week, I think maybe the week before, he like got back up on that Barkov line. He had a couple points, but they were like the flukiest looking goals that I've like, Barkov like threw the puck into the middle and like bounced off Tarasenko into the net. So going into the finals week, like he got moved down to the third line on like the Saturday. So that, I'm not going to pick him up. And then on Monday, he was like back up on the first line and he had like, I don't know, 2 goals and like 3 assists in those first 3 games. And I regretted not adding him. So I feel like I'm a begrudging lean Tarasenko, but
yeah, it sounds like you're saying it's probably a bit of a coin flip. Neither of them have been on the top power play since Verhaeghe returned. But yeah, okay. So I think Brian was just messaging me during the thing. I think we need to have a patron cast at some point or some other show where you can come on or just a regular show and like give people more time than just like half of today to come up with questions. I think you are our resident expert. So congratulations again on your great accomplishment. Brian sent you so Brian, what was it that we gave Ryan last season for winning the KKUPFL?
A tote bag and a dog bandana. And I still sent the t-shirt, did I not?
And the t-shirt.
Yes,
yeah.
And a coffee mug.
And the coffee mug.
So we need to send you new stuff that you don't have. I mean, if it was me, I'd still want another t-shirt with like the new year because the shirt you're wearing the shirt right now. It says
the t-shirt is coming. Ryan's gonna get another t-shirt. It's just a matter of what else he selects from the secret Keeping Karlsson swag shop.
But also, let us know if you want a pizza, whatever. Like it's just such a great accomplishment. Like, it's something I never expected. Like I assumed at some point we'd have a 2-time champ, but just the fact that you've earned the KKUPFL for only 3 years and you're a 2-time champ, It's like, man, though I'll bet you I'm looking, there is like, and I'm not saying this to disparage, of course, but obviously there is some luck, like how you won by like 1 point. Also, I'd imagine Lewis is probably like screaming about how I noticed in your draft, you drafted Austin Matthews and spent a good amount for him. Lewis, when he was in tier 1 last year, did the same. Big difference between what Matthews gave you this year and what he gave Lewis last year. So obviously that goes into it. But maybe just to finish, the last question before we switch to playoff talk, we did have a question from the guy who beat you in your first season. So you won the fast track, but then in the playoffs, you lost in the finals to Jeffrey, aka the GABA goalies. And he just wanted to know like how you adjusted your strategy going from doing, your first season, you were in tier 6, and so you did a snake draft, a slow snake draft. But then tier 1, we do this auction draft. He just wants to know, like, how did you adjust going from like a slow snake draft against maybe other newbies? Well, we never know. Like, new people to a couple might be people who've been playing fantasy for 20 years. So I don't know, just like call new players newbies, but newbies to our league. To going into the auction. Like, what was that transition like?
Yeah, the auction format's like so different, and that was actually my first auction draft.
Wow.
So preparing for it is sort of like, there's not a lot of fantasy hockey auction stuff out there. Like, I think there's none. So someone wants to make that. I think Jordan said he might make something a while ago. So Jordan should totally do that. But so I actually looked at a lot of fantasy football auction stuff, and try to kind of piece from there what I could apply to hockey. And I think a lot of it was just sort of around, like, I think I made my values for the players and I kind of stuck to them. So I tried to build everything, like all the variables I thought I cared about, I tried to build that into the values themselves. So that when the draft came up, I would just use those as a guide. And I felt like I wasn't really targeting players. Like, I feel like in a snake draft, you kind of find that you have players you're targeting. And then based on your draft position, you find yourself maybe reaching for players in certain spots because, like, oh, I really want this guy, but I don't think he'll get back to me, and things like that. In an auction, I sort of felt like I approached it as, I don't care who I get. I have values. My values reflect how good I think people are. I'm going to just try to get as much value as I can in drafting. So, like, I think I'm trying to bid on everybody because, like, if I get people below my value, then I'm ahead, and I don't want to pay more than my value. So I think that's kind of how I approached it going in.
So it's not like you were values. You're not like you went into this past season being like, I want Austin Matthews. I don't care. You thought
it's funny actually because my allied chat, we were 4th overall pick, so we had a lot of Austin Matthews, and I remember looking at my values thinking like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get Austin Matthews. Like, I like Austin Matthews. Like, he's up there, but like there's a lot of people I'd take more, and I suspect somebody's going to outbid me. And then I got him, and I was like, oh, what do you know?
That worked out really well.
Yeah. So
a nice number of goals this year, landing at 69. Yeah. How many shots? I was like following on Twitter. Then I like went to bed or something at some point. I know he was like taking like a ton of shots trying to get that 70th goal.
He had 11 shots.
Man. So, no, 12. I'm seeing 12 shots 12? In the last game.
I'm just saying. I said he wasn't going to get to 70.
Brilliant. You did it, Brian.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
He took 17 shots. He took 17 shots in his last 2 games and no goals. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I'm sure if he just wins the cup, then he won't care. But of course, he first will have to help the Leafs beat the Bruins, and we'll talk about that series and all of the others in just a sec. We'll just take a quick break. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back. So Brian and I are here as per usual. We like to, before the playoffs, get in to kind of take a look at each series. Since we have Ryan here, Ryan, you're up for sticking around, talking some playoff hockey with us. Awesome. So this is what I'm thinking for the format. We could just kind of keep it loose. I always have the option to edit as we go, but maybe we'll see how this goes. Thinking like, why don't we just kind of go through each series? And we're recording this Thursday evening, so 2 of the Western series aren't decided yet. It depends what Vegas and LA are going to do tonight. But we know 6 of the series, and we can speculate on the other 4 teams. But I think we go through each one, kind of talk about just like general thoughts of like, who we think is going to win, and then also maybe some players. Yeah, and then I'm thinking we could talk about some players, that we were targeting in drafts, like maybe some sleepers or some players maybe you're trying to avoid, just people like, don't forget about this guy. So let's just see how it goes like as we go. But I guess we were just talking about Matthews. So Toronto trying again against Boston. They've lost to Boston many, many times in the playoffs. They got the monkey off their back against Tampa last year. This year, going into the year, of course, Boston, it looked like they weren't going to be so tough, right? Like their 2 top centers weren't coming back. They're probably going to struggle to even make the playoffs. And now another like super strong season, 109 points, like very close to top in the league. Rangers had 4 more points to win the President's Trophy. But yeah, are we like just assuming? Like I don't know. I'm kind of thinking the Leafs are going to win. I don't know if this is like such great content, like 'cause it's just like whatever. I can say like I think the Leafs are going to win, but if I had to make my pick right now, I think this is the year the Leafs beat Boston. It's just my hunch. Brian, what do you think about that? Or is it just dumb, naive?
I mean, like, I don't think you can. I think it's naive to get like overly confident that it's going to happen, especially like, I think home ice matters in the playoffs. Like, I believe it. Like, we've seen referee impact, but I think crowd impact is like, I think it's part of it. Like, players are human, players are impacted by what's around them. And it seems like a series that's close enough. And honestly, like my concern with the Leafs is like their goaltending did not hold up towards the end of the season.
Do we even know yet who's like starting game 1?
I haven't seen. I mean, I'm sure those who are listening to like Toronto Talk Radio 24/7 might have an inkling, but I'm not one of them. But I'm just looking at the last. Oh gosh.
You know that Matt Murray's healthy. He started having conditioning.
Well, I think that just means that just emphasizes how in trouble they are. The Leafs gave up 6 to New Jersey, 5 to Detroit, 5 to Florida, and 6 to Tampa to lose the season. And you know what? Maybe to end the season, 4 straight losses. And I wonder, Elon, if part of that was like getting Austin Matthews to 70, right? Like they were just like, screw it. We're going to try and like they scored a lot of goals through those games too. Like I just mentioned all those goal totals, but like they were basically they lost 6-5, 5-4, 5-2, and 6-4. So it's not like they were completely out of it. I don't know what to say. They got wrecked on the penalty kill. The Devils were 3 for 4. The Red Wings were 2 for 3. It's not the way that you want to head into the playoffs, right? And I don't know. They don't have a goalie they can count on. I would go with Joseph Woll, although he has not been the same since returning from injury. So that's concerning because I don't think Samsonov or Woll can hold up in a 7-game series against Boston. I think that's the concern. So it'll just be a matter if one of them can be good enough for long enough to let the Leafs offense do their thing.
Yeah, or maybe they could alternate. And actually, I think that's also going to be the interesting storyline on Boston's side. Are they going to finally alternate their goalies? Last year, they did it all year. They had like one of the best records ever. And then in the playoffs, they decided to go on Allmark, and it didn't work out. They got eliminated in the first round. And I think a lot of people were saying, why didn't you stick with what was working? So I think that'll be fun to see if Boston does. Imagine if Boston and Toronto just keep alternating goalies every game. That would be a whole new paradigm. It would be a fun wrinkle to the series. But switching to the forwards, I guess one thing, like if you're saying that you're concerned about the Leafs goaltending, then if you're so again, like the KKPP, I'll just say our playoff pool, we're redrafting every round. So we don't think about like drafting long term. I guess if you're, the drafts that are for the whole playoffs, very tricky. You basically just have to like pick a couple teams and then load up on them and just hope, like you're not going to win probably if you're just like balanced across the league. But like focusing on KKPP, Brian, you make a good point that maybe the Leafs are going to let in some goals. And so there could be some targets on Boston. Obviously, Pasternak will go early in drafts. But Ryan, do you have any idea of some players you might be targeting later for Boston? I guess Marchand is someone who didn't have his best regular season. Only 67 points in 82 games, but he's been a great playoff performer for many years. Maybe he's someone that will fall a bit in drafts and could be good value.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, especially depending on sort of where you can get him. Because Toronto goaltending, I don't know. I think my bid's on Samsonov to start, but I agree that both ways it's kind of shaky. But like, I could see this being a long series. So, like, I don't know. I've lost track of the Boston lines. Boston's a team that I haven't followed as closely this year because I was never on the Charlie Coyle train at any point. But it might be a good team sort of get a defenseman from too. I know. Like I'd take a McAvoy from there and like roll the dice.
Well, the interesting thing is actually most recently, and we'll see how it leads into the playoffs, it's been Kevin Shattenkirk on the top power play and not McAvoy. So in the KKPP, we're forced to draft 2 defensemen. If you wanted to totally fade defensemen, You could always just wait till like the last round and then get your last D. I'm sure Shattenkirk, well, unless I'm so like influential right now saying this, but like I'm sure Shattenkirk will be available to you. I think he's a good late pick. And then also, I guess I'll throw out another player, and then Brian, you can say if you agree or if you have another like dark horse. You were the one who had the dark horse on Roslovic on Columbus when I like mentioned a whole bunch of players, and you were like, actually, I'll take this one guy that you didn't say, and then he ended up being the best after that episode. But so we'll see if you do it here. But I think Pavel Zacha is actually another good. Like late, it's like Marchand, I think would be good value if you could get him like whatever second, third round, and like Pavel Zacha, if you can get him like mid draft, like he's had a really good season. And don't forget, like KPP, we're points only. We're not worrying about the shots and the hits and everything like that. Zacha ended up with a 62-point pace, top power play. He's gonna play with one of Marchand or Pasternak. I guess it's he or Coyle who's the top line center, but usually it's Zacha. So I think he's someone that I would definitely be interested in getting late in the draft, and then. Yeah, Brian, you can comment also on any Toronto players. I do have a fun Toronto player fact also to throw back at you. But what are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, Zacha like finished the season really strong, huh? Like he was pointing like almost every game for the last 20. I think he pointed in like 17 of his last 20 games. He also took 6, 0, and 4 shots respectively in his last 3 games of the season. And he's basically top line, top power play because he plays with Pasternak and on the top unit. And I'll drop a hot take. Zacha paced for 62 points. Marchand paced for 67 points. Like spot the difference, right? It's not that big. Marchand shoots a little more, but points only, no big deal. Also, I feel like Marchand is like, we talk about playoff performers and whether that's a thing. If it is a thing, Brad Marchand is one of them. So I'm not saying take Zacha before Marchand, but I wouldn't take him too far after. I agree with you both that there could be a lot of goals. It could be a long series. And so I wouldn't, Zacha would be somebody I'd prioritize. I don't think there's really anybody else who jumps out. Like DeBrusk is forever getting opportunities. Danton Heinen was showing up towards the end of the year. I think that's about as deep I would go on the depth chart. Van Riemsdyk is around too for like potential something like maybe a late pick in a playoffs long pool where you're not redrafting and you just think Boston might make a deep run. Then you could consider him then.
Yeah, and I do buy into, and like maybe this is to my peril, I do kind of buy into reading into playoff performers. I think that the playoffs just are different. You've seen like players like Austin Matthews, for example, on the Leafs side, kind of not do as well in the playoffs as he does in the regular season. Maybe teams are getting away with clutching and grabbing and all that. You sort of I feel like the players who are able to overcome that and still do well in the playoffs. Like the prime example to me is like Kucherov. Like he's just like money every playoffs. Like I feel like I don't have any worry that now that the style of play is going to change in the playoffs, Kucherov's not going to be as good. Like he's proven it.
Yeah, I think shout out to the Dauber playoff guide. Like I get that every year, and they do a good job in there, sort of calling out players and kind of what they did in the playoffs last year, and sort of what they have a reputation for doing in the playoffs. Because like I remember the first KKPP, like I wrote a bunch of like scrubby New York Islanders. Like I had like Josh Bailey and like JG Pageau and stuff on my team, and they were just getting point after point because they were just like playoff grinders that year.
Right.
And like this year's the same, like on the Toronto side, like I think Tyler Bertuzzi is like a guy who did really well for Boston last year. And then this year he's finished the year hot. Yeah, he's finished the year hot, and like going into this against the team that he was briefly on, I think he kind of fits both criteria there of playoff reputation and mid-round guy.
Yeah, I think Bertuzzi is a really good later pick also around the Zacha place. I think you could also go Bertuzzi if you want to take a leaf. But
Agreed.
Okay, I guess we should.
Yeah, he came on strong towards the end of the season too. Finally, right? Like I think we're almost like, oh, can we really believe it? Like, are we going to buy in? But if we saw this from Bertuzzi in the first 20 games, we'd be like, yeah, he's doing exactly what we thought he'd do in Toronto. So I wonder, I'm curious to see, in the playoffs isn't the greatest testing ground, but whether this is a lucky chance or just a late bloom for Bertuzzi in Toronto.
Yeah, he's not on the top power play, but as Jeremy mentioned in our short shifts group chat, he was saying how in playoffs he doesn't put as much weight into whether people are on the power play or not, just because there's like fewer penalties. The refs don't call as many penalties, so it's more just about like obviously power play still matters, and there are still some power plays, but the fact that Bertuzzi isn't on the top power play isn't as much of a detriment maybe as it would be in the regular season, just because it might just be that unless they'll do that crazy thing where Boston gets a penalty and they have to give Toronto a penalty to even it up or whatever craziness they do in the playoffs. All right, let's move on to another series. But obviously, if you guys think of any thoughts you want to say about this one, we could just jump around. But I want to talk about Carolina and the Islanders next. You brought up the Islanders, Ryan. This is a team that for a while didn't even look like they were going to make the playoffs this year, but a really strong surge at the end. Coach Patrick Waugh, he's done this before. Like he came out of nowhere, was like, oh my God, this guy's an incredible coach. He brought Colorado to the playoffs. I remember that year it was like Colorado had a super high PDO, and we talked about it on the show. And like I remember Brian, you like really nailed that prediction that Colorado wasn't going to be as good the next year. And then before we knew it, Patrick Waugh was fired. But who knows? I don't know if you have this data now on the Islanders since Patrick Waugh took over, and if they were lucky also. But definitely seems like he turned them around. There's a lot of interesting players on the Islanders that I think you'll be able to get late in drafts. Like Ryan, if you just want to wait and go and get like Kyle Palmieri, like Brock Nelson, just got a 70th point, like always underrated Brock Nelson. You'll be able to get him. Like I said, Palmieri did well at the end. Obviously, Barzal and Horvat would be nice targets, though they will have to score goals against the Hurricanes, who are obviously the favorite. And the player that interests me the most, I'd say, in the series is Jake Gensel on Carolina. He's just been so incredible to end this season, and he's playing for a new contract. Maybe one of the most exciting UFAs since, I don't know, like I'm thinking back to like when Tavares was a UFA or when Stamkos, like this is the kind of level guy and now he's like, if he could help Carolina go on a long playoff run also, like this guy's just going to make so much money. And yeah, he ended the season 13 points in 8 games. I even wonder, like, is it worth considering? Like, do you take Gensel like as the top Hurricane, like even over Sebastian Aho? I definitely think he's like in the top 2, and like we talked about on a recent show, Brian, over Svechnikov at this point. Like Gensel's just, yeah, I wouldn't. I think if you take him in the first round of the KKPP, I don't think there's any problem with that.
Agree. Yeah, why wouldn't you? I mean, like Carolina is notorious for having this kind of low ceiling top star, and so far, like I don't know that Gensel's like really burst through that ceiling himself, but he's been incredible, and maybe he could more than Aho and Svechnikov and Natchez. I'm trying to think of who else is in the drafting realm here.
Your favorite, Teuvo
Teravainen. Yes, I know. I'm going to throw in Kuznetsov also. So yeah, I wouldn't blink if you took Gensel first in a playoff pool.
Also, this is another series with, I don't know what's going to happen with the goaltending. Like the Islanders rode Varlamov for a lot of games.
Well, you mentioned like Patrick Waugh. Like, did he do the magic? And like, I'm not sure, but having 935 goaltending down the stretch from Varlamov, who won 7 of 8 games with that save percentage, definitely helped.
Yeah, but at least you have to give Waugh credit for playing Varlamov. Like,
sure,
most coaches wouldn't have. Yeah, but who knows how? I wonder what he'll do in the playoffs. And then also with Carolina, I feel like we don't know. Like, they've been alternating Anderson and Kochetkov for a while. So I don't know, Ryan, like, are we going to see like the most exciting playoffs ever? Well, I remember there was like recent playoffs where like they were like the teams were like so many goalies were playing, but like maybe this will just be the first playoffs where multiple teams are just going in with a strategy to alternate goalies, like regardless of how they do.
Yeah, I could see it. I think my biggest concern with this series from a fantasy pool perspective is like I'm worried I don't know how many games this is going to go. Like I think if I set the over under at like 6, I think I'd lean the under. So people like Gensel, like Aho, would that sort of shift them from being like first round KKPP picks to sort of like early second round picks? But yeah, on the goalie side, like I guess Waugh had Varlamov back in Colorado back in the day. And now he's kind of gone back to him, and that's been going well. I agree. Like I think like all of the goalies should probably play in this series. It feels like with how they've been bouncing around. I guess unless one of them just totally dominates to start. But yeah, I don't know. Carolina too. Teravainen. I don't think I'm going to draft him in the first round, but I think there's going to be a round that I'm going to draft him, and he'll be good.
Right.
So.
Did we mention Seth Jarvis also? I don't know if like when Brian was listing all
no,
the
sorry, I missed him.
14 points in his last 13 games to end the season for Jarvis. He's been on a huge tear. I guess that's what happens when you're playing with Gensel. Gensel, Jarvis. Like I think those are the clear top three, and then maybe Svechnikov could be like an interesting pick, but also I don't even know. But and I guess also like the Islanders. Are we done with like being worried about the Islanders being good defensively? Like I guess this year it didn't turn out that way, though. Like you said at the end of the season, like they got really good goaltending, and they didn't let in as many goals. But I feel like probably Carolina. I agree with you, Ryan, that it's just so hard. Like I don't like in these drafts, like for KKPP, like trying to predict the number of games, just because I feel like I'm always wrong anyways.
No,
but
that's true. I agree with that.
But this is like a clear favorite.
Yeah, there's a clear favorite. I would like caution against writing off the Isles entirely, though. Like they could keep getting goaltending. I don't know about the Patrick Waugh coaching impact necessarily, but I do feel like, there's. Yeah, like there could be something there. When Waugh came back and everyone was like, "Oh, like that's ridiculous. Why is somebody hiring Patrick Waugh today?" And I think the answer was that he's been like working really hard, like in the figuring out how to be a better coach, and he's been one of the more creative coaches in the minors or whatever. So, I'm curious to see what he's capable of doing. Yeah, I'm not gonna write it off. Like Rod Brindamore is like a top, like a high end coach too, and like the Carolina's just like desperate to break through, right? So I don't know. We'll see if they can, but I'm not 100% like ready to believe that this is going to be a quick or easy series, and I'm also ready to believe that it will be.
Yeah, and what about like Noah Dobson too? Sort of like I haven't heard whether he's going to be healthy for game one. Like if he was a guy who fell away in playoff pools, like that could be an interesting high risk, high reward pick at a certain point.
Yeah, he's got to be, right. Like he's got to. My guess, I had him on a team like in this league where I faded at the end, and like I could, he wouldn't have mattered. Who am I lying to? But I just assumed like, okay, he's hurt, he's not coming back, because like they haven't shared a whole lot about it, have they?
Well, no, latest is like day-to-day upper body. That's what they keep saying. They keep like saying before each day, like he's not going to play, which is like you wouldn't say it if it was obvious. So, but yeah, that does make it tricky when you're doing your drafts. Do you just use a late pick on Dobson and hope he'll play? Who's even the next defenseman? Like I haven't actually been following. Who's been playing on the power plays? Is it like Mike Riley, Jeremy's favorite from the
Jeremy's favorite.
How's Mike Riley? I guess Pulak or Sam Bolduc came up, but yeah, I guess Riley would be a pretty bonkers pick. But he actually has 5 points in his last 6 games. I mean, he's done well under Patrick Waugh. Like him and Kyle Palmieri both have really turned their season around since Patrick Waugh took over.
Just for I did do a bit more digging while you guys were talking on the coaching impact, and the Isles are demonstrably better with Patrick Waugh. They're a little less offensive, but much better defensively. Like really, really, quite good defensively. So I wouldn't expect any more goals, but perhaps the goaltending can continue to be good.
I think though I don't know if this is called going out on a limb, but maybe we could each have one of these. If I'm going to pick one series that I'm like the most confident in who's going to win, it's probably this one. I think. I mean, it
sure looks the most clear cut. Oh no, actually,
I'm picking another one.
Yeah, me too. Sorry, I'm going. Why don't we jump?
Washington?
Yes. The Rangers over Washington. That seems like a slam dunk.
I mean, I agree. Like both of them are, but I actually just really am into Carolina, and the Rangers just. I don't know. We haven't seen them, I guess close yet. Like last year, they got eliminated earlier than expected. But I don't know. So, okay, let's talk about it. So Washington gets in. There was a crazy clump at the end of the season where it could have been Detroit, it could have been Pittsburgh, it could have been Philly getting that spot. But Washington holds on, scores an empty net goal against Philly in a tie game to get the win. Even though, anyways. Pittsburgh maybe had some complaints about that, but we don't need to retread. Is there any reason to expect that the Caps can do something? They have Ovechkin, right? And Ovechkin's been scoring goals lately. Dylan Strome, I don't know. I guess they have definitely their starting goalie. Charlie Lindgren played both of those final games. But I mean, I guess on paper the Rangers are pretty stacked. I don't know. Washington's like, it'll be fun to see Ovi with all of his cup shenanigans again. But it'll
It's
be a
not
challenge.
good. Elon, like, what pipe dream is this? This is nuts.
Ryan, all right, so tell me. Okay, so speak on why you think it's such a slam dunk. Just give the obvious takes here about the Rangers.
New York is really good and has a lot of really good players and has a great goalie. Washington is so with like two good players and a goalie who has been, like, Lindgren has been winning games down the stretch, and all credit to him. But this is one of his longer runs we've seen this season. So maybe he can continue it, but I think it's going to be an onslaught against the Rangers. I just don't see the Caps having any kind of like either like offensive or defensive firepower to stop what's about to happen to them.
What do you think about Panarin in terms of the KKPP? He has 26 points in his last 14 games. He's just been insane to end the season. Like, if you have like, I'm just wondering, like, how high is he going? Like, I guess then we have to like consider some other players. I like McDavid, like McKinnon. I don't know, Kucherov. Are we looking at like, is Panarin right there? Is he like, how high would you take this guy?
I think I am a little bit lower than that, just sort of because I'm afraid of the number of games. In that first round, like Panarin's been amazing this year, and I think he's a good example of a guy. I guess like going back to drafting, it's always interesting. Like he's a guy who, I never would have expected to see him shoot as much as he did this year and score as much as he did this year, and I hope that translates into the playoffs. It'd be really exciting. But yeah, like I'm trying to think of. I can even try to see here where I have him, but like, I don't know, does he come in around like 10th or like I'm picking 14th or I'm picking 13th. So if he's there at 13, I will take him. Yeah. But, I'm trying to think of all the people I would take before him. I think there's still a few more.
Yeah. Like I could see the Rangers series being shorter than the Carolina series, but I could see the Rangers scoring more goals. Right. So like there's and like I feel like at the end of the day in playoff pools, this stuff isn't really helpful like to predict. Like it's such like you can follow your hunch and try and figure it out. But yeah, I'm not anticipating I'm not putting too much stock in that, but I guess I am just trying to say that Panarin could still be worth it even if you think it's going to be a short series. I'm picking 13th. I just looked it up.
I'm 11. We're all ladies.
What?
Ladies.
I picked. Wow, so good.
You know that Panarin, by the way, last playoffs, only 2 assists in 7 games. So if we're going by the concern that maybe he's not built for though the year before he had 16 points in 20 games, which is obviously much better and a longer run for the Rangers, but still like not 2 points per game like he's been lately. So maybe that would be another reason to fade him a little bit, unless you think he's just totally changed this season or the Rangers have changed how they play. That would give me like the same kind of like Austin Matthews concern. Like I worry if maybe he hasn't proven that he can be super clutch in the playoffs. He was good in that series for Columbus when they beat Tampa, but that's a long time ago now. But yeah, and then flipping on the Rangers, or like on the other side, like I guess like how high is Adam Fox? Like because again, like we are forcing people to draft 2 defensemen out of your 10. Fox ended the season with 17 points in 14 games. There's still like a couple defensemen who did better. Like Roman Josi ended with 18 points in 14 games, and then obviously we're looking at like Makar and Bouchard and like a couple other guys like around Quinn there. Hughes. But is Fox, Quinn Hughes, right? So yeah, is Adam Fox someone that you would have like take it with like Ryan, for example, if Fox falls to you, can you see him being someone you take with your 13th pick, or Brian?
I don't think I would. I think I'm probably taking forwards there. And like I would be fine with maybe a second tier defense. Like I think there's a lot of good D defensemen. Like I think there's at least like 9 or 10 that I'd be happy with, like as my first defenseman. And I think I could probably get at least one of those at the 3-4 turn if I want to go that way, depending how many defensemen have gone already. So I don't think I would look at Fox quite that early, but
then you won't
like
which is fine.
Getting defensemen doesn't like it feels good to get a good one. And like Ryan, I had Roman Josi. Ryan, you were talking about Hedman and how he was good, like great for your cupful team, and I had Roman Josi and like he was better than I could have dreamed of, and I would do it all over again. But I don't know, picking 13th, I don't think I'm gonna want like some forward to cheer for. Like that for me, that like it's a casual playoff pool. Like I'm not overthinking this. I want to win, but I also it's more if Adam Fox is there for me in the third round, which he won't be, I'll consider him then.
Mm-hmm. So you're both thinking you're just going to kind of go for like second and third tier defensemen. You're not going to be trying to get one of the top D. I guess if you're picking 13, that means you're also picking 14. You get 2 picks there. You could knock out a forward and a defenseman. So you will have a chance. I think you got to imagine at least one of Fox, Makar, Bouchard, Quinn Hughes, like you said, Josi will be there. So that'll be interesting to follow the strategy. I guess we'll find out at the end of the round whether it was worth it to swing on that D or like, because you look at the Rangers, like who else, if you don't take Adam Fox, there's not really another, kind of like what we were saying about Boston, where maybe you go for like a Shattenkirk. Like a lot of these teams that are really good still like don't really have, like even look at Carolina. I guess like people could jump on a Brady Shea super late. The Islanders, like if it's not Dobson, maybe you're just not drafting any defenseman unless you want Mike Riley. But yeah, I guess it's Eric Gustafsson who's been on the second power play on the Rangers. He had 31 points this year, but a lot of that came early on when Fox was hurt. So I don't know. I guess as we go through, let me know if you come up with a defenseman that you can. Well, I guess like a defenseman you could get probably later is John Karlsson on the other side of the series. Brian, one of your favorites, and he had a really strong finish to the season. Maybe he's someone you can get in like the third or fourth round, since you're not going to be able to get Adam Fox there. Unless you just think that there's no chance that Washington does anything in the series.
I'm going to say that Washington is going to be like that team that no one wants to draft from. Like I feel pretty confident saying like I think if we tally up the number of players drafted from each team, I think Washington's going to be the lowest. Probably the Isles will be the next, and like because the West, every team I think has a decent shot, and it's like I think it's going to be pretty evenly distributed. But I don't expect to see a lot of So like on Washington, I would take Ovechkin at some point, and sure at some point, especially with our like it's one round, it's defense. So like I would take Carlton if we got to a certain point. Strome, I'll take him, but I think that might do it for the Caps that I'm interested in drafting.
All right, fair. And all right, we should probably move on to another series here. Do either of you have a preference, or do you want me to just pick one? We don't have to do like all East and then all West. Let's jump to the West.
No, let's
Quinn
not.
Hughes.
That's ridiculous. That's
so
ridiculous. Needlessly chaotic. We're three-quarters of the way through the East.
Apologize.
We're going to finish. And you mentioned Tampa earlier, and I thought you were going to segue. And then you're like, let's talk about the second Rangers defenseman behind Adam Fox, which was a really weird place to go. Florida and Tampa, which is like... To me,
I've been
actually,
put in my place.
I'm more.
This is like the second time today. A dinner today. Like we're sitting at the table. My baby is there. Like Dina's trying to like feed her food. Then she like turns to me, my girl, and she like goes like with her hand like a choo-choo train. Like clearly she wants me to sing the Good Evening Train song. And so I like started singing it, and then Dina like turned to me like, no. Like what? You're like because like she was trying to feed her, and he had just like put food in her mouth. She's gonna choke. And I just felt like such like a I blew it. I really messed up here.
I've gotten the same sort of. I've gotten that too. This week.
I just got it now. Also, when I suggested to go to the West,
I'm playing at the table too much.
This was worse.
Does the song go? The Good Evening Train is coming. How are you?
Yeah. Choo choo. Yeah. And then she goes like this, choo choo, and then we go and we say hello to, and then it's up to her to say the who.
Classic.
She's like, Baba. I'm like, yeah, Babushka. How are you? Choo choo. Okay. Anyway.
All right.
So Tampa
Florida and Tampa, the series that Ryan's just like nodding politely. Well, throughout.
Dad talk.
Florida, Tampa. This is the series I want to watch every game of. Like I'm like even more so than Boston Toronto. To me, this is like the most exciting and appealing series. I want it there's got to still be bad blood from a couple. Remember, like Florida had that great season, and then Tampa just like I think Tampa won in 7, right? That year.
2 years ago.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago, and then last year Florida, just chose not to participate. But this year, I could see us getting back to another 7-game series, and I am I'm pumped for it. Like I'm looking quickly at the West matchups, which do look pretty tasty, but I think this is my marquee like watching matchup for the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think this is also the one where I think is the best bet to bet on the underdog, because I don't even know if you like, you look at the total points in the season, and Florida, handily beats Tampa 110-98. But I think once we get into the series, I just really think it's any team's game, and maybe even Tampa Bay would be my favorite, like just because of the experience. I mean, Florida did go far last year, but I feel like also Vasilevsky like had a down year, which, tell me if this is crazy, but like I almost wonder if that's like good. Like, save it for the playoffs, Andre. Like, now is when
It's not crazy. Yeah, I think that's okay. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and like I love that the Panthers like loaded up also. So yeah, I don't know what there is to say really. Like I'm not sure. Like I know we're looking for like who the good picks could be. I mean, we've seen Anthony Duclair in Tampa, and I assume everybody else has too. But maybe he's someone who's still flying a little bit under the radar in your playoff pool. Duclair has been great. He's got 6 points in his last 7 games. Throws on average a couple shots a night, but again, we're really sticking to points only. The thing he doesn't have is power play deployment, right? He's still
they've been gone back to Nick Paul.
They've gone back to Nick Paul. They've had Anthony Cirelli. Everybody gets a turn on that. Well, it's mostly been Nick Paul actually.
Hagel doesn't get a shot. Hagel is like the Ehlers.
Yeah. Yeah,
but he's really good. I think Hagel would probably be my 4th pick, like fourth forward.
That was my question. Would you go Nick Paul on the top power play or Hagel? Because Paul has been like pretty decent too. He's got 7 points in his last 8.
For KKPP, I'm going Hagel. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I'd lean Hagel, but then Nick Paul's good too. Like I wonder if they'll go kind of in a similar spot. Talking before about like Washington, New York, we think maybe having the least number of players drafted. I could see this series maybe having some of the most, because I feel like on both sides, like there's so many people that even like, especially as I say, Duclair, people like that as later round picks, like they seem obvious, and it's sort of Florida has similar sort of, they have like their top 6 I expect will all be drafted. On the defense side too, they have a lot of people. I'm interested in Montour, especially if he falls far enough. Like comparing like, would I rather take like Fox at like 2nd round-ish, or if I could get Montour in the 4th, which maybe I'm being optimistic. He's still a power play quarterback, but it feels like people are sorted down on him. He's been kind of inconsistent this year. But then even after that, right, like Ekblad and Forsling, I think one of them at least will be good. Maybe both of them will be okay. Like if I can get a defenseman who gets like 4, if I can get a defenseman who gets 5 points in a series, like I'm very happy with that. So
Forsling
like
ended the season
4 or 5. Yeah.
Forsling could be a good later target. Forsling is like the East's version of Ekholm to me. Just like he's been like solid, getting a lot of points, doesn't need the power play to do it. You don't have to worry about, there's fewer power plays in the playoffs. I feel like if I end up with Forsling, Ekholm, and then a bunch of stud forwards, I'm happy with that draft for sure.
100%.
But you're right about Montour also. He could fall, and he could end up being like, how did Montour end up doing last year in the playoffs? He had 13 points in 21 games, so 51-point pace. So that's really good for a defenseman for sure. So, I mean, we just don't know if it's the same Brandon Montour, since he seemed so different this regular season. But he did pick things up a little bit in the end. Like if I just look at the splits for Montour this year, he was like 9 points in his first 27 games, but he ended up with, he had a stretch of 16 points in 19 games, kind of slowed down again by the end. So yeah, he's high upside, I guess, but like based on this regular season, obviously a bit of a risk, but obviously you just let him fall, and it's pretty good. And I guess Hedman also, when I was listing all those great defensemen, the top tier guys, I didn't mention Hedman there, but maybe I should have. Like if we're talking especially about defensemen who have a history of being great in the playoffs, he had 3 points in only 5 games last year. Tampa didn't last long, but the year before 19 and 23, the year before 18 and 23, the year before 22 and 25. Like that's a proven playoff performer for sure. And Victor Hedman, and there's no Sergachev. Like he's going to be leaned on for huge minutes. Like I don't know if Hedman's been resting a little bit to end the season. I see he's pointless in his final 3 games of the year. But if I look at the game, like, oh, and he was playing like crazy minutes too. They should rest him. But anyway,
he didn't play yesterday. It looks like. So.
Right. Okay, that was his moment to relax. Yeah. But yeah, I think Hedman would definitely be a good, especially like if you're saying in the third round, if you've missed out on the people are imagining are the top guys. I wouldn't be shocked. I'll just say I wouldn't be shocked to see Hedman end up leading all the defensemen in the first round. It could definitely happen.
Yep.
Yeah, you've got a situation where like you said, I'm with you both. Like you've got loaded top sixes. You've got teams that like it's a series that seems too close to call, and so that means you don't know who's going to win. So like everyone's going to probably invest similarly in both teams, and you'll hopefully get a lot of games out of either. So yeah, this is the series that I would be aiming to pick from. But if I was in like a playoffs long pool, it's the series I would probably be avoiding picking from because it seems so random. Elon, how about we head west? Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, like, sometimes you do just want to pick one if it's a close series, if everyone else is I feel like for the season-long playoff pools, my strategy is just you want to go where people aren't going. Like, especially, like, if you have first pick overall and you take, like, McDavid, then maybe it's smart to then grab like whoever you can in the next round. But I mean, like, especially if you have later picks and some of the top players are gone, maybe you do just like realize partway through, like, oh, I grabbed Kucherov. No one else is going for Tampa. I guess give me Point, give me Stamkos. And you just hope that they're going to go far. And if they get eliminated in the first round, whatever, you lost. But if they don't get eliminated in the first round, you might be the front runner out of like the 12 people. And I guess we've already had our big Tarasenko versus Sam Bennett debate. So yeah, Brian, I think we now can move to the West. Is there a series that if I say it, you'll once again drop the hammer on me, or am I safe to or is there no bad decision here?
If you say, where to go? Well, as of recording, we only know two of the 4 series, so I might drop the hammer on you if you go to one of the unknown series to begin. I think that would be a strange decision.
To start speculating. Okay, so fine. We'll save the speculation to the end, but let's just give the rundown. It's Dallas versus, we don't know, either LA or Vegas, and then it'll be Dallas against either LA or Vegas, and then Edmonton also against one of LA or Vegas, and then the 2 series that we know are Winnipeg versus Colorado and Vancouver versus Nashville. Both of these, to me, seem like very close series. Like, I could see these also going long. I think the big question, okay, let's start in Winnipeg, Colorado. The big question to me here is like the goaltending for Colorado has been really, really bad lately. Shams shared a tweet today, like, while Winnipeg is getting like the best goaltending, Hellebuck is incredible, probably the goal you want the most going into these playoffs based on how the season's gone. And then, yeah, Georgiev has been really rough. So the question is just, does Colorado have enough firepower to, make up for having the weaker goalie? But I think this is like, I would have been afraid to go up against Colorado. I think Winnipeg maybe now is feeling at least okay. But also Colorado just won a cup recently. But also it was a very different team. So I feel like I could just like go in circles about who I would lean. My gut kind of still tells me that I think Colorado will win. I think Winnipeg is a bit of a team of chokers in terms of the playoffs. But obviously I thought that about Washington a few years ago, and then they won the cup. So I guess at some point,
but Washington, too, right? That's different though, because Washington had been favored several times and never followed through. And Winnipeg, I think, has always sort of been considered like a bubbly team. But
well, they lost to Montreal that bubble play. Speaking of the bubbly teams, they blew it there.
That's true. That was a big opportunity for them. I'm looking at expected goal differential, and Winnipeg and Colorado are basically like even. Like they're both like top 10 teams, and they're really close. Like just looking at their 5-on-5 play, they seem very, very closely matched and very similar like ways of arriving at that expected goal differential in terms of like the strength of their offense and the strength of their defense. So I think it's going to be, I think anyone who writes off Winnipeg too quickly is going to be like maybe surprised. I think it's going to be a good series. I see Colorado prevailing just for like depth, even though like we've talked about how they have less of it lately. I think they've done an okay job of keeping it full. But I could see it like last year. I wouldn't have said I could see it going 7. This year, I'd say I could see it going 7. Like I would say Winnipeg gets more games and more of a chance than the Islanders, who have sort of been that other bubble team we've mentioned, who like could surprise but likely won't. And that makes someone like, well, of course you have McKinnon and Rantanen and Nichushkin, and then your next here in Colorado is Drouin, Laakkonen, and Casey Middlestat. Right, don't forget him. He's had some performances, and this could be an opportunity for him to show up too.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. And obviously on the flip side, on Winnipeg, again, I keep thinking like, I messed up, like didn't mention this defenseman. I hadn't mentioned Hedman before. Like Josh Morrissey is someone who, especially if we're worried about Colorado's goaltending, Morrissey has 13 points in his last 14 games to end the year. He had a slow part early on, but he's ended really hot. So there's a lot of fun defensemen. It'll be fun to see when these drafts start, of like if they're going to all go early in a big run, or if you'll be able to get someone like Morrissey a little bit later. But yeah, with Winnipeg, I guess also the lines have just been shaken up so much. It'll be fun to actually see how they land here. With the last game they had like Monahan, Toffoli, Ehlers. I guess Scheifele and Connor weren't playing. This game's happening today. Oh, Brad Lambert is playing. I guess he probably won't play in the playoffs, but he had a really great season in the AHL. He'll be someone fun to see, at least how he does today. But that's probably a conversation for another time. My question is here, I'll throw to Ryan. In terms of like sleeper picks for later on, like Tyler Toffoli has been kind of meh since coming to Winnipeg. Sean Monahan has been like better. Is it like clear like you want Sean Monahan over a Toffoli, or going into the year it was like Sean Monahan was like a total nothing. Toffoli was like a big star.
Yeah, I'm on the fence there. Like I feel like Toffoli's a guy like, and like I'm still thinking of his upside, and I feel like this is a great time for that upside to show. Monahan was so hot when he first came to Winnipeg there. Then it felt like he cooled off for a bit, and then he kind of started to heat back up again. I don't know. Like, I guess maybe this to me is sort of like choosing the guy that I associate as being a playoff guy, which I think of Toffoli as being that more so than Monahan, which isn't fair to Monahan. Like Monahan's played a lot of playoff games too. But like thinking of Toffoli's like run in LA, brief little run in Vancouver there and stuff, like I think I would lean Toffoli, but that might just be biases on my part.
I agree. I feel like, if you're looking at which guy potentially has another year, I think it's Toffoli. Like I still remember like what he did in Vancouver, right? Like when he just was unleashed, and maybe the conditions aren't the same in Winnipeg and we're clearly not seeing the same return. But I mean, Monahan, like he's pointed once in his last 5 games. I know he was on a run before that. I think that was good. I just don't know how much it's gonna continue. And sorry, in his last 5, like that includes the one happening tonight. So I guess I'm making an assumption there. Monahan's had a really good season though, and I think maybe something we'll talk about more in the offseason is that he might be draftable next year, right? Like as a late round pick, depending on where he plays and what the team looks like around him. So Monahan's got that going for him, but in a playoff pool, I think I'm gunning more. Like, what's the difference over 6 games between Monahan and Toffoli? Like, if Monahan wins out, I could see it being like +2 or 3 for Monahan. But if Toffoli wins out, I could see it like being +7 or something like that.
Yeah, maybe this is a silly conversation to be having. When we could be talking about like Scheifele versus Kyle Connor, which is probably a more.
I don't know. I think that's a little. People. Is it though? Like, I would go Connor and then Scheifele, but I wouldn't stress too hard about which guy I pick first either.
I guess I wonder even more like the kind of the second tier of people in Winnipeg versus the second tier of people in Colorado. Because I guess I'm very interested in this series because like I think Winnipeg just like plays like what I think of as like playoff hockey. Like you got Lowry as your captain, like they are tough, they'll hit you. And in a playoff environment, like I imagine they're going to be going after Colorado guys. If Hellebuck stands on his head, like could this be a lower scoring series, which could benefit Winnipeg's? Like would I maybe be more interested in some of those, when I'm thinking second term, thinking, I guess like Ehlers, even though we all want him to be top tier, but he keeps not getting the opportunity, but like Ehlers and I don't know, I guess like Little Step, Toffoli, and Monahan versus like the Drouins and the, I guess Nichushkin I'd put higher.
There's Middlestat now, who's been
Middlestat,
kind of like we've forgotten about him a little bit, but he's like the second line center. Like had a really good start on the team, but it's cooled off. I think Middlestat could be somewhat interesting, but I do think like Colorado definitely does lean mostly on like those guys on the top power play, and then like Drouin is obviously interesting because he's been having these runs playing with McKinnon, which is just like you just want that exposure. Like in the last game was like McKinnon, Drouin, Lehkonen, and then Rantanen with Nichushkin and Middlestat. So that also obviously gets interesting when they start splitting up McKinnon and Rantanen, but it's been Drouin on the top power play. So I would probably have him. I guess we could have that same discussion we have had on the podcast a bunch of times, Brian, about Lehkonen versus like Drouin, but that might be also a bit of a coin flip at this point where you just like either one has similar chance.
Agree. Yeah. And then, we covered Winnipeg. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next series here. Well, I guess we have one more series that we know of for sure, which is Vancouver against Nashville. And I think Nashville has shown that they are definitely a team to fear. I guess the goaltending again comes into play here. I believe Demko finally did return. Let me just get the stat there of how he did in his one
good game. It's like 1 on like 40 or something, or 1 on 30.
Oh, stop 39 of 40 versus Calgary, then playing again today right now, and it's he's letting 2 goals on only 12 shots. Oh no, pull him. Rest of it. But anyways, yeah, obviously like a lot of this is going to come down to if Demko is up for it, though. Obviously DeSmith wasn't too bad, but obviously Vancouver's just going to be riding Demko, and then obviously Nashville's going to be riding UC Saros. And so yeah, you like wonder like, do you want to draft a lot of players? You know, there's a lot of exciting offensive players on these teams, but it's also potentially 2 of the best goalies in the league. How does that affect your strategy when you're drafting, Ryan? Like, are you potentially worried about taking like an Elias Pettersson if you know he's going against UC Saros?
I feel not so much in this case. Like, you know, I think it could definitely happen, but I think usually I'm looking more at the player than the team they're going against. You know, and I think I apply that in the regular season as well. So like, I think I'm not afraid of Canucks players because of Soros or Nashville players because of Demko. I think, you know, it's going to be a series. You pick people and they go. I think the Canucks will be very interesting, though. I think there's a lot of good people on the Canucks who I'd love to get late in the playoff pool. You know, like, I don't know how far like Dakota Joshua will fall, but like Joshua Garland, I'm interested in that. Even like
Really?
Suter, like since Suter's been back with JT Miller and Besser, like if I get to the end, I'm picking my last forward, depending on what's left, like I could see him being there. Höglander, I have a soft spot for, even though, you know, would I take him here or not, we'll see. But I think for like a last pick flyer, I think there's a lot of interesting people here who could be like 5-point guys over the course of the series.
Who am I to argue with the reigning 2-time couple ultimate champion? Like, to me, I just feel like I'd rather have a more sure thing, like someone that I know is going to be in the top 6. Like, I feel like these guys you're mentioning, like any of them, like Suter, like Dakota Joshua could end up like falling down the lineup. Dakota Joshua, though, clearly like the coach likes him. He gets like big minutes. So I'd have him a little bit higher. Like Höglander, though, could be like, I can see him being like a scratch. Like, I don't know. It just like scares me a little bit.
They won't scratch him.
Okay.
He's Petey's guy.
Okay, that's fair. But yeah, and then Nashville is really like just, it seems like you have the one line. And then I guess like you could look at, you know, we always love talking about our Tommy Novak and like an Evangelista, but really it's just that top line of Forsberg, Nyquist, and ROR. And like Forsberg is another person where I wonder like, how high do you draft this guy? Like similar to Panarin, like Forsberg's just been insane to end the season. It's 27 points in his final 17 games. Do you think that you guys are both picking 13? Do you think there's any chance Forsberg falls to you? And like, if he does, is it like a slam dunk, or do you have any concern? Like, to me, it just seems like he's been so money. And also, I'll just throw out there that I think Nyquist is probably the cat's out of the bag, but I think he's like such a great, I don't know if you call him a sleeper, but at some point, if you can get him like 4th or 5th round, I think that would be really good because he just continues to point. I feel like no one really like wants to believe it. But anyways, but Forsberg, okay, Forsberg falls to you. I guess Brian first. Like, if Forsberg falls to you, is that a slam dunk easy pick at 13?
Yeah, it is. Like the one thing that's in my mind with Nashville is that they seem like a team that they were fantastic or they were great in the regular season. Forsberg was amazing, but I worry about teams with one line come playoffs, and that's the description that I would give Nashville. Like, can you even name a second line there? Like, I'm sure you can name a bunch of players, but can you name like a cohesive, consistent line?
Right.
I don't know. So like they'll be really
Novak with someone.
Yeah, and like sometimes
Evangelista.
Novak's been on the third or whatever. Like, it's hard to even tell. Last 3 games, I guess Novak, Beauvillier, Evangelista. Yeah, there's your reminder that Beauvillier's there, and then Zucker, Sissons, and Jankowski. And like,
there's your reminder that Zucker's there.
And throw like Cody Glass in there somewhere. So like, I worry my worry with Nashville is like Vancouver will key in on that top line, and then that'll be that. Not to say that Forsberg can't overcome it, and Nyquist and they've been fantastic as a unit. I think they could handle a team keying in on them, but I also think that when there's only one group to shut down, they're always going to see the toughest look, those 3, and I think that might be detrimental to their scoring ability.
No, that is concerning, I think, especially if they're going to key in on that top line and then they're not going to call penalties when they hack away at them.
Right.
Maybe that could be a concern for someone like a Forsberg to maybe let him fall a little bit further. Have we mentioned JT? Should I just mention the name JT Miller? We'll have
really
discussions over the summer, like whether he should be a first round pick in couple next season. I feel like maybe yes, because he's also so great, like with the multi-cats, but he's like had such a great year. So is it worth having the discussion? Do you pick Miller or Pettersson first? Ryan, do you have a take there of which Canuck is the first one off the board for you?
I think with how things have been going lately, I think I would take Miller over Pettersson right now. Like he's been so hot. He's playing well. Like I associate him as being a clutch guy. So I'd lean that way.
Okay. And then what about the D? Who are we taking ahead? Roman Josi or Quinn Hughes? Is that also feels like Josi's the hottest defenseman going into the playoffs. If you look at just his stats over the last month or so, we're looking at now 8 points in his last 5 games, but you can scroll further than 5 games and just see a lot of points in that game log for Roman Josi. But Quinn Hughes is probably going to win the Norris. He's been amazing all year.
Yeah, they both feel so good. I probably agree with you, Josi first, but I don't know, Hughes is very fun to watch, and I think in a format like this too, where it's just points and assists, I think he's a very appealing pick as well.
Right. Are you guys? Is anyone going to pick a winner here? Have we been picking winners as we went? I have a hunch that this is going to be the underdog's going to win. I think Nashville is going to take out Vancouver. But what is that worth? It's just a random guy on a podcast saying something. But it's I feel like Tampa's going to win, and I feel like Nashville's going to win. And if you ask me why, I could probably give you reasons for both. But I just have a hunch that
and
Vancouver.
Washington.
Just
don't forget Washington.
I don't think Washington's going to win. I hope they win. I don't know. Rangers blew it last year in the playoffs. Who do they play? I'm totally blanking on what happened last year with the Rangers. But I know they lost in the first round. I forget to whom, but it did happen. Someone listening, someone in the chat. Is anyone left here in the chat that can let us know? But okay, I guess clearly.
Sorry,
since either of
you want to know who the
Yeah.
Rangers lost to last year?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see if I can find out.
But anyway,
I'm taking Vancouver in this series. I guess I'm taking Vancouver in this series. I'm actually taking Toronto in the Toronto-Boston.
Me too.
So I think I'm with you there, even though I'm hesitant about it.
The Rangers lost to New Jersey in 7.
Okay.
Yeah,
Man,
which is a pretty decent showing.
How did New Jersey fall so far? But that's a separate conversation.
And sorry, and last year, by the way, I said I think I said Florida didn't participate. I think I meant Tampa. I was talking about their history. Florida made it to the
finals.
To the finals, yeah.
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 Matthew Tkachuk was incredible. Let's all reminisce. Tampa lost to Toronto. Toronto finally won their first playoff series.
It was a crazy run for Florida.
Florida destroyed
year.
Toronto.
Right, and then they destroyed Toronto. Yeah, they destroyed everyone. They beat Boston in 7, and then they won 8 of their next 9 games against Toronto and Carolina. So yeah, I'm gonna say Toronto. Yeah, we should have been making picks. Okay, I'm going Toronto over Boston. I'm going Florida over Tampa, Carolina and the Rangers. And then in the other series, I'll take, you know what, if I'm taking an upset, I think I'm going to take Winnipeg. And I'll take Vancouver.
Is Winnipeg an upset? They have more points. They're the second seed.
I think it's an upset.
Okay.
You don't think that's an upset?
I feel like usually the team that had more like points in the regular season is considered like they're the second seed and they're the home team. I don't know. I'd call that even. I think that series is like you're not really picking an upset there. It's like Toronto, Boston. Is there an upset? I don't know. But anyway, whatever. That's just nitpicking. Schwab Squad in the chat here is saying he also couldn't remember about the Rangers and Devils, and also still trying to remember if Seattle beating Colorado was a fever dream. Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
All right, so
Seattle almost made it to the conference. Like they lost in 7 to Dallas in the second round.
So let's talk about these 4 remaining teams. We don't know who's going to play who. Obviously, these are all teams that have a great chance to go far here between. So Edmonton, Dallas, and then, Vegas and LA. I feel like Vegas is especially the team that it's like you can't even pay attention to like what their record is or, how they've done recently because like Mark Stone is going to magically return for game 1. And can I do a side like thing really quickly? The whole thing about how everyone's mad at Vegas because they're clearly doing like cap circumvention and like, oh wow, what timing that Mark Stone is like healthy just in time. Someone shared a tweet in our Discord that I thought was interesting and a good point. Like maybe this is actually we're looking at the wrong way. Like maybe it's good. Like good for Mark Stone. He's always injured. Like just let him heal. Maybe he's not even 100%. Maybe he wasn't 100% last year either, but maybe they rested him as long as they could, and then they'll get him in, and even like a 90% Mark Stone is still worth playing. So it's like, maybe they're just like caring about the person and caring about, well, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously they care about winning, but like also they want Mark Stone to just be as healthy as possible. So it's not necessarily cheating in terms of the people are looking at how they're cheating by being able to like get Hurdle onto the their cap situation, but like I feel like it's also cheating in terms of just letting, but it's not cheating, you're allowed to, right? Just they earned the ability to let Mark Stone rest for the rest of the season and heal up because they earned enough points in the first half. I don't know, I'm just saying, like, I don't know, it's good for maybe if more teams did this, like maybe if more teams just rested their slightly injured players, then the playoffs would be more exciting because all the players would come in more healthy. Right now, like how many players are going in like already hurt that are just gonna, and then you get to the finals and like you're looking at like 2 hobbled teams playing against. Wasn't Matthew Tkachuk like playing on like one knee or something in the anyway? This is just a long rant, and I could see that you guys just want to move on. So, anyways, that sorry,
I loved it. Thank you.
I'll just stop talking, but I'll just say that Vegas is going to be interesting, and for sure there are going to be some potential like sleeper picks, like number 1 Mark Stone. Like, don't just like not draft him because he has a flag beside him on Fantrax because I'm pretty sure he's going to play. And you may want to take a look at the stats last year for Mark Stone in the playoffs because he was very good, a big part of the cup run. Obviously, Eichel also. And I think also someone like Tomas Hertl could be a really good pick that'll probably fall. His numbers weren't like so exciting over in San Jose, but I think he's going to be a really key piece here. And yeah, I think Hertl is like someone I'd be really excited to get if I can get him like, whatever, 4th, 5th round.
Yeah, you should be able to. I feel like you'll be able to sneak Hurdle like in a lot of form. Probably like maybe not in the KKPP, but he'll be up for grabs to whoever like wants him first.
Yeah. And like Barbashev's a guy I'm curious about too, who he's a person during the regular season I just like kept getting him wrong. Like I drafted him and he started slow, and then I dropped him and he started doing well. I think I had him back for a while and he was bad. So like here, he was really good in the playoffs last year. So kind of can he come alive again in the playoffs this year and be like a good late round flyer in the first round? Or will he just sort of be what he was to finish the season?
Oh, you're muted, Elon.
Oh yeah, and also Marchessault, like remember how great he was in the playoffs last year, won the Conn Smythe. So yeah, a lot of good options there. We'll see if Vegas is playing. I think it doesn't matter who they're playing. I think they're going to be a really strong contender. I think that both of these series are going to be really good. Like no matter who ends up against who, I can see both of these combinations going 7 games. Like whether it's Vegas and Edmonton or Vegas and Dallas and then LA, whatever. Yeah. So And because LA is also a team that I feel like they had a good stretch. And I think it all comes down to like which version of Cam Talbot. It doesn't all come down to that, but a big part of it is like, is it crappy Cam Talbot for that stretch right around the All-Star game where it was like, this guy's in the All-Star game, he sucks, or like the one that like helped get them this far. But LA is like super deep, right? Like if you look at their lines, especially once they're healthy, you've got like Deneau, Arvidsson, Moore. Then you can have a line with Fiala, who by the way, Fiala had an incredible playoffs last year, and like it was only like 3 games. We got 6 points. That's good. Byfield, Kempe, Kopitar, Dubois. Like so you just kind of go down the lineup, and you have a really deep team here. So I could definitely see LA making some noise. I don't know. What should my question be, Brian? Who's your pick of the 4 to go the farthest? We haven't even mentioned Dallas and Edmonton, who I guess are probably going to be the favorites.
So which 4? You're asking me Dallas, Edmonton, LA, Vegas?
Who's going the farthest of the 4 of these teams?
I think it's I don't think LA. I think that's the one team I'm going to say isn't. And then I think it's I want to lean Vegas as the incumbent, but I feel like Dallas has gotten pretty scary. Mm-hmm. And Edmonton, I mean, you're like always a threat, especially if it's going to come down to goaltending, I think, for them, and depth, which they still don't really have. Like, you would think if you're a team with Evander Kane playing on your third line, you're in pretty good shape. But I just don't know that that's
true. They
true.
got Adam Henrique. And who's that other guy? Sam Carrick. That's how they address their depth. So I say it's kind of in jest, but also they might actually I don't mean to only be that.
Henrique's been good.
Yeah, Henrique's
I think no.
Ish.
Well, I think that's a decent depth piece, right? And this has been the refrain for the Oilers for a long time. I think where I'm curious is goaltending. Pickard has been starting almost every other night, and he's been doing like hot and cold. Skinner has still really held up well, and Skinner's had a couple rough runs over the last couple months, but outside of that, I guess the goaltending isn't that interesting.
Yeah,
Actually, I was going to try and make something out of it. But yeah, well, no, I guess it's more like if Skinner struggles in the first game or two, I wonder how quickly they move on from him.
Right.
But I wouldn't. So yeah, I guess if I had to pick a goalie, you know what? I have a hunch about Dallas, so just give me Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question with Dallas is they're also a super deep team where it's going to be really hard to decide who to draft from them. Matt Duchene had that run in the middle of the year where he was such a great fantasy stud, but he really ended cold. And now it seems it's Wyatt Johnston, the Johnston Ben Stankoven line is the new hotness for the second line. And then the Duchene and I know Dadonov is going to be back, so I guess we'll have to see how things kind of shake out a little bit. But someone like a Duchene could be really good, or maybe it's just a boring pick at this point that could end up doing nothing. Also, people were really noticing. Trev has been posting our predictions from last summer for the patron rankings and where we got things right and where we got things wrong. It's a fun time in the patron Discord, by the way. If anyone. Or if you're a patron but haven't been in the Discord recently, still having some fun convos. Roope Hintz really had a down year overall. He ended up with only 65 points in 80 games. He's probably going to fall pretty far. I'm sure a lot of people are just going to be sorting their players by points per game or points in the season, and then Hintz will probably fall to 5th, 6th round. There could be good value there. Or maybe there's actually something wrong with him that we just don't know. Last year in the playoffs, Hintz had 24 points in 19 games. So if you're going with proven playoff performers, Hintz is that. It's just a matter of, like I said about someone else, it's is this the same? Oh, Montour. It's he was good in the playoffs last year, but then he didn't do that well this year. Brian, do you have a hunch?
Feels like when Hintz is, I like Hintz, especially if Hintz is sitting there for me in the 4th or 5th round, I'm mashing that, I think.
Yeah, that's my takeaway too. Roope Hintz is cold. Great news. I'll happily if someone else is going to pass. But Ryan, you were going to say more.
Well, no, exactly. It's just I think it could be a long series. I think, I was going to say before, just sort of in the past when Roope Hintz has been hurt, we've known he's been hurt. So, maybe he has a lingering thing in there, but I think he was decent to finish the year. I know he scored a lot of points against me in the semis. So I think I'm interested in Roope Hintz, and, I think Dallas is going to be very dangerous this playoff. So if I can get pieces of that top line, I'm interested in that.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think it'll be really like when you guys were saying how like Florida versus Tampa is like the series to watch. I feel like if it's Dallas versus Tampa Bay, not Tampa Bay, sorry. If it's Dallas versus Vegas, I think that could be like a really cool series also. So it'll be fun, and obviously we'll have more information. People listening to this know what the series is going to be. So maybe we can just cap the convo here, unless either of you. I made a list of like some like sleepers. Let me just look through this list and see if there's anyone that we haven't.
Did we cover
about.
LA? Did we talk about LA?
You said that you're not into LA, and I listed a bunch of players on the team, and I talked about Cam Talbot. Is that enough?
Right. Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. I'm gonna look through this list really quickly that I made and make sure that we covered all these. These are the players that I wanted to make sure we touched on. Victor Arvidsson on LA is someone kind of in the Hurdle vein. People aren't thinking about him. He missed most of the season, so maybe Arvidsson is someone. Let's just check really quickly and see like how he ended up doing when he came back right at the end of the season here. I'm bringing him up. Oh, I spelled his name wrong, which means now I'm making. Oh wait, but I have editing ability. Edit point. Arvidsson ended up doing pretty well in his limited time. Like, he ended the season with 12 points in 17 games, had a 2-goal game against Calgary right near the end of the year. So maybe he's someone that I could see Arvidsson falling to like the 7th, 8th round. Like people aren't going to be like targeting him at all. So that could potentially be a good pick. So he's on my list here. Just feel free to just jump in. Oh, Matthias Ekholm. I think I just mentioned when I was talking about Forsling, how Forsling was like the Ekholm. But yeah, Ekholm was also like the Ekholm. Like he had such an incredible end to the season. So he's someone that I like if you can get him as a late D. We didn't mention Noah Hannafin has been the top power play defenseman on Vegas for a while now. So you look at his overall season numbers, not too exciting. But if he falls, far enough and you're fading D, like he could be like a really nice D pick. And actually you could say the same for Devon Taves, who is, not on the top power play. But again, like if you're going with the Jeremy rule where we don't maybe care as much about power play since there's not as many of them, Taves is like really great for even strength points. Yeah, that's everyone else we covered. So I guess it makes sense because I was like hosting the show. So it makes sense that we covered the players I was interested in. But yeah, any final thoughts about the playoffs, Brian? What's your strategy going to be for your draft? You're picking at 13, like you said. Who are you hoping to get?
You know what? I'm gonna be clearly honest, and I think I already sort of said as much. I am happy to just have fun
vibes
in the yeah. It's like my playoff draft is a vibes draft. Like I've sweat when I can sweat through the regular season. This is just like where I can like dial back to like when I first like started playing fantasy and just be like, who do I want here? I'm not gonna do a whole lot of research. I'm just gonna pick the guy who feels good in that moment. So that's my strategy. I'm sorry.
And that's probably the best way.
And like
to
picking 13th sucks, by the way. I feel like I feel like I've picked on the back end of just about everything for the last like 3 or 4 in all my pools, and it's anyway. I'll get over it.
Sorry, you'll make it. Philip Forsberg and Adam Fox.
Yeah,
thanks.
I feel okay about it here. Like I feel like there's a lot of people who could be there at 13.
Sure, so. I just like to have like Connor McDavid. Like it's fun to have Connor McDavid.
By the way, Matt in the chat is saying no love for Trevor Moore. So let's mention Trevor Moore. Yeah. Probably someone to grab in the 9th round if you can.
It was implied,
But yeah, to what Brian, what you were saying about relaxing, Underpants Gnomes had a good comment in the in my draft, the KKPP R1D8 draft chat. Playoff fantasy after tough regular season is like the cool down after a rigorous workout. So it's like,
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Getting ourselves ready for the off season of nothing. So we like ease into it. Yeah. Hopefully no one stresses too much. By the way, for everyone playing in the KKPP, reminder right now, how you like it's the top 6 in your division, the first round advance to the second round, but you still want to like do as best as you can because in the second round, it's not a snake draft. It's going to be the people who rank the highest have early picks. And then every round, if you're the first pick in round 1, you're first pick in round 2 and round 3. So it's a pretty nice advantage. And that's why, so this draft is very important. But obviously everyone is going to do their best. And also since there's no play in between games, you can't do ad drops. So like Brian said, you could just kind of pick and hope for the best. Ryan, any final thoughts about your strategy, or also why don't you give us a cup winner? Maybe, we should all just do that to end the show.
No, I don't want to do it. It's tough. Like, so I think this is, so I guess I'm a Canucks fan. So the last few playoff pools, I haven't had to like balance, having a team that I'm rooting for and teams that I'm picking players from. So this is the first year where it's going to be sort of like, oh, to take Forsberg, it's like, oh, but if I take him, I'm sort of taking him hoping he does well, but then the Canucks still win. So I feel weird about that. Like, I don't know. My playoff strategy, pick good players, pick a goalie late, choose the goalie based on a team I want to win, just so I can watch them be rooting for the team. I think that's a lot of it. And cup winner, I don't know. I guess I'd probably say Dallas would be my choice.
You guys love Dallas.
But, yeah, I don't know. I want to say the Canucks. So that's my fallback choice. But okay. Dallas will be my pick.
Elon, who are you? I'm gonna go. Well, I think okay. I'm gonna say like Toronto, Florida, Dallas are like my top three. Like I think they've got a good. But I guess I have to pick one. Well, who am I to disagree? I want to like agree with Ryan just because he's been essentially right for 3 seasons of fantasy now. But it's also we'll diversify. I'll go. I'm gonna go. I think Florida's kind of a fun swing. I'm gonna go with Florida. I'm not sure why. I'm just gonna. Yeah. And what was the other question? Is that
no?
it?
I think you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I do really like Carolina. I have a hunch about them as my team from the East, and then I'll go from the West. It's just really hard not to go with Vegas, considering they were so good last year. It's pretty much the same team, and they have Tomas Hertl. Like they don't have Riley Smith, but they have Tomas Hertl. So I guess I'll just go Vegas. So it would be fun to see Edmonton. I'd love to see like just McDavid finally go on that run. I guess Ryan, if you're a Canucks fan, you probably hate the Oilers. Is that how it works, or is that more Calgary and Edmonton hate each other? Okay.
No, I think we all just hate Toronto, and like.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, I guess because I was laughing because like Boston Pizza's running ads right now, right, to sort of like unite Canada behind the Canadian teams. So sort of like we should all cheer just for all Canadian teams as opposed to cheering for our teams against other ones. So maybe we should just root for everyone.
I mean, I have some friends from Ottawa that just still hate the Leafs. It's so funny. It's just like, oh, I really hope Toronto loses. I love cheering against the Leafs in the playoffs, and it's like. Ottawa versus Toronto is a rivalry from like 20 years ago. You might want to let it go, but I know it's fun. I mean, I don't like love the Leafs or anything, but I would love to just. I had so much fun last year. Let me have fun. Let's go. Let's have 3 rounds this time. And the second round didn't even count last year. Those games sucked. Leafs got trounced. Anyhow, this was a fun show. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on. It's like we've been doing shows together. It felt very natural. I really enjoyed this. Would love to get you back on some more. And congrats again on your great accomplishment, Brian. Always a pleasure. I guess we'll talk offline about when we're going to come back on to talk. I guess definitely by the end of the first round. And we do have some other fun ideas. Like we said, Shams' like roundup of all the postseason like press conferences, like getting. I feel like that's fun. And then we always also like to do our like. I like the Red Boys, Green Boys episode where we look at players who had very different first and second halves and try to see like how that can help us with their projections for next year, whether we should like focus more on the first half, focus more on the second half, just go with the average, which is just the total. So yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun over the off season. We're going to come up with the episodes. You don't have to worry about that. You just need to make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson, and then all the shows will come to your feed. Good luck to everyone playing in the KKPP. Thanks so much to the patrons for your support and hope you have a good time. And with that, Brian, I guess let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits? Take us out of here.
You know that I don't have the doc like you. I'm sure you knew. But I'm like scrambling as you say that. I'm like, oh God, the doc, the credits.
You could just even not like. You can be like,
I considered it.
This was vibes.
I considered it, but I like to thank the patrons.
Well, yeah, do that at least. Okay,
I like to. All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Paul, Lucas, Top Cheese, Roman, Don, Michael, Jordan, Brian, Patrick, Aaron, Philip, Ivan, Sammy, Andrea, Zach, Tom, Ryan, David, Dusty, Ricard, oh, I'm sorry, and Patty. Thank you for their super supporters. Congrats to our couple
good beer
coordinator Kevin Hebert. dad for the second time recently. Way to go. And like, thank you to your new child for waiting until the couple season had like basically just ended. We made it. And actually, Kevin, in honor of that, named his child KKUPFL. So welcome to the world, KKUPFL. Elon and Shams are continuing on GameDayTweets.com. All the
Mostly
news
Shams.
you can use. And our short shifts crew, I'll thank them. Why not? Lewis, Jeremy, Shams, Derek. Follow them at Short Shifts KK. Logos by BrandonWeave.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dauber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and Fantrax. Yeah, because we're using them for the KKPP.
All right, great job. All right, thanks again for coming, Ryan. Great job as always, Brian. Looking forward to our next show and enjoying this first round of the playoffs and drafting for the KKPP. It's going to be a fun next couple of days. While we're having fun with all of that and enjoying this playoff hockey action, is there anything we should be keeping in the back of our minds?
Well, you know there is. It's a rhetorical question. Please make sure to do all you can. Like, hey, playoff pools are a great opportunity. Bring someone in who isn't like all the other people who are in. Do what you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
All right. What a fun show.
Thanks, Ryan. You were great, and I think we should definitely do a Patreon. Like Ryan, if you're, you don't. I'm not asking now because it'd be awkward if you were like, hell no. But we'll write you about potentially seeing if we can like set up a patron cast because I feel like the patrons have a lot of questions.
I didn't give much time. Let's say bye now to the live people, and then you guys need to stay on to make sure the file loads. But thanks for watching. See you in the Discord. Bye. And stream.